We hope that you enjoyed the show. Find all of our shows on selfdiscoverymedia.com under podcasts or selfdiscoverymedia/shows. And for all our current shows, go to What's New. We are supported by you, the audience. You will see a nice big shiny blue button for one-time donations or follow us on Patreon and you will be able to support us there. We enjoy bringing you such wisdom. And the next show will be up in just a moment. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of Mental Health Awareness right here on selfdiscoverymedia.com. I'm your host, Sarah Troy. My guest today is Chanel Parrish Brown, known as SP Brown. She's written a really incredible book that's really kind of hit a broad spectrum, which she didn't expect it to do so. It's Gifts in Brown Paper Packages, an emotional, hard-hitting coming-of-age story based on her real-life triumph and adversity. It is a factional story where she takes fictional characters, but based on fact, things that have happened to her in her own life. It's a narrative, no holes barred themes of domestic violence that tie in perfectly with the author's dedicated work on behalf of the Safe Center of Long Island, a nonprofit serving Nassau County. Drawing continuously from the painful experiences from her childhood while embracing and sharing her hard-won self-truths for the first time, the author S.B. Brown, powerful debut novel, Gifts in Brown Paper Packages, has earned out-of-the-box acclaim as success, including a debut #1 in 3 categories in Amazon within the first 72 hours in the Christmas week release. We're going to be talking about how this really does affect the people across the board, as we had a conversation before the show started. And it's about mental health. Everybody assumes that it hits demographics in a different way, but there's always commonalities through everything. And those commonalities can hit anybody at anywhere. Anybody can go through domestic abuse. She's talking about and paralleling what she went through, but it's very, very surprised at how it's hit home with other people. I'm going to put a disclaimer out there, folks. Sorry, I do have bronchitis right now, so I am coughing and spluttering and sounding rather hoarsey. So forgive me for that. Welcome to the show, Chanel.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Sarah. Thank you for having me.
You know, I interview a great deal of authors and a lot of people who have chosen to write in a way like you have, kind of your story in a fictional type way, but bringing in those facts. And, you know, as we were talking before we started the show, in the people that have read it, the broad spectrum of what people have said and the broad spectrum of color and age, you know, careers and everything else of how it's hit them or what it's said to them. And we really love to categorize people and pigeonhole them, don't we? Oh, this must be because they're a person of color, or they must be because of this, or they must be because of the poverty. And if we could just take away all of that and look at what are the commonalities of this domestic abuse, of strife, of mental wellness, it doesn't really matter who you are. Pretty well everyone goes through it in some way or other, don't they?
That's right. That's right. I mean, that is a point that hits home right off the bat. I think it's very befitting that we're talking about this. It is Mental Health Awareness Month, right? But I think that every single month is Mental Awareness Month because the issues are so prevailing and so consistent. And unfortunately, it's something that we should be talking about consistently.
Yes.
But to your point, the book has been interesting in the context of the feedback that I've been getting. As I mentioned to you before we started the show, I had an expectation of sort of who I was writing for. But I really had a vision that this book would not be pigeonholed and to actually get feedback from readers that, this book resonated because, of something that they're going through in the moment that may not be similar to what Kyrie, the main character, is going through in this story. But the point of the book is about perspective. It's about strife. And I'll just talk quickly about the title, which is Gifts in Brown Paper Packages. I mean, it's something that people say, well, what what is that, right? You know, what does the title mean? Well, the crux of this story is basically that, you know, we as human beings go through all kinds of things in life. And I say God delivers us packages, right, on our
Mm.
doorstep. Oftentimes they're beautifully adorned. You know, the great relationships, right? The great job opportunities, you know, the wonderful things that happen in our lives, those are gifts,
Mhm.
and they're gifts that are beautifully adorned and wrapped in bows. However, the other things that show up that we don't want, the
Mm.
strife, right?
Mm.
Um, there are gifts there too.
Yes.
And you know, from talking to a girlfriend one day as I was finishing up this book, which was initially called Kyrie's Story, and we were talking about the meaning of the book, and you know, she reminded me of a song from The Sound of Music that is titled very similarly. um, Sometimes God's gifts are wrapped in brown paper,
Mm.
tied with string.
Nice.
And what that really means is we've got to get through the strife,
Yeah.
and actually take the time to step away from it, unbox it, dig through the ugly to figure out what was the gift in that, what
Yes.
was the strength. And I think that being able to identify what I'm calling your strength in strife is really about perspective. And that is what distinguishes
Uh-huh.
a survivor and someone who actually survives and thrives, right?
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
yeah. So
I'm
that's that.
glad you mentioned that, because people can survive things and they could
Yeah,
be battle worn. And in the battle worn, they feel they can't take anymore, and anything else that comes, I can't survive this. But somebody who survives something and makes that self-discovery of maybe how strong they are, how courageous they are, how much ability they have, they step more into a thrival mode. If I
that's right.
can go through this, if I can beat this, then I know I'm strong enough to face anything else that comes my
That,
way, right?
that's right. That's right. But you know what? It's not easy when you're in
No.
it,
Oh God,
right?
no.
And
No.
you know, when you're in it, it's like this is the worst. This is the worst. Like, you know, we're often, and look, I'm not, you know, I'm not someone who has mastered this. You know,
It's a life mastery, darling. It's a life mastery. Each
I
decade
want to.
will produce something else.
That's right. You know, I'm putting it out there. Like even, you know, even this journey that I'm on right now is one that has not been, you know, I have not been able to just always recognize where the gifts are.
Yeah.
Right. This is a difficult path. I'll just tell you a little bit about
Mm.
myself. Uh, you know, I'm an attorney by trade, which is what I've done for the last over 20 years. Uh, Employment discrimination attorney, so working for large corporations, and you know, it's not it's a function that while I did well and I was successful in my career, it's not one that fed my spirit.
Mm.
And I've been writing creatively for some time, and decided after, you know, I wrote this book from 2016 to 2017, and you know, went the traditional route for a while trying to be published, and put it down right before COVID, a bit discouraged,
Yes.
uh, that process. And then I caught COVID early in 2020 and was quite sick for a long time,
Mm.
and very afraid, right? My
Yes.
first symptoms were March 17th. That was a day after the sort of shutdown.
Right.
I could not figure out, like many people who were ill at home, whether or not I was going to actually survive this.
Yes. And
And
what
I
it was at that point, right?
and
Everything
or
was
right,
just, yeah, what is this? And, we're hearing people are dying from it, and, and what can be done about it? And everything was just this big, huge panic question mark.
and watching the news was,
Yes.
it was really disheartening.
Yeah.
What the gift was in that was that I recognized in that sickness, and I was sick for probably 2.5 months
Hmm.
before I was really recovered and like it was probably 6 weeks before I knew I was like kind of out of the woods, I realized that it was really important for me to feed my spirit, because tomorrow's not promised to any of us.
No.
And I had spent a lot of years doing some mentoring, you know, through in the context of my role. Like I would mentor law students, I would do panels where I mentored young women through my law school, what have you. And I continue to hear from people, wow, you grew up where? You grew up in Harlem? You grew up like you didn't grow up with much, and wow, you're an attorney? Like you're so inspirational. And I was like, wow, they don't even know anything about me.
Right.
And they think that just me who I am is inspirational. I want to impact people. I want folks to know that you can get through the strife.
Yes.
And it became really important after COVID for me to publish this book. And, you know, I ultimately walked away from my full-time employment to take at least a year to year and a half to invest in this as a lifestyle, at least for a little bit, until
Congratulations. I love it when people take their redirect to their soul purpose.
Yeah.
Everything else you've done was your ability, your skills, you did it well, but now, you know, in the search and the ignition of your heart and soul, you really stepped into who you are, why you are, and now where you're going will be so much clearer. And the impact that you'll have on people, because it comes from the open heart and soul, it will, you know, the spirit is just waiting for you to open the door. And then once you open up that door and you start going through, everything becomes clearer. Everything becomes more meaningful, more purposeful. And when that soul and heart and spirit is ignited, everything about life becomes more colorful. At the same time, you see the darkness, but instead of getting swallowed up in the darkness, you see where the light can shed on the darkness and lighten it up. And it's so congratulations for taking that plunge and really going on your soul journey. You will not regret it.
Thank you. It's but it has been a journey, right?
It's not, especially when you're coming from, you know, high success and obviously very revered and all of that, you know, and it's like people are going, you're doing what?
Yeah.
You're releasing the 6-figure to do what?
Yeah,
and, you
that's
know,
right. And what? You want me to read this 262-page book so that I can try to, you know, tell you whether or not I think it's like good to, you know, expose to this group of people. Yeah. The rejection that happens when you're in a space like this, it's real. It's real, and it's certainly grounding. I was very humble coming into this because frankly, while the only one who had ever really told me that I could write well creatively was my college English professor, right? So in other words, like, this was me stepping into a space that I had not been validated.
Your own twilight zone. Yes.
My own twilight zone. So talk about finding the strength in strife, right? Yeah. I've got to figure out on a daily basis. And I'm, you know, to be completely transparent, you know, it's been hard. It's been a hard journey. So I appreciate the opportunities to talk about it, to talk about how important staying grounded in your truth is in the context of your mental health. And frankly, you know, finding your strength is you have to find it daily. Like it's not like something that, even though this is what I'm preaching, it's not something that comes easy.
No, and you know, the thing about stepping into this, the pros and cons about it, and there's a lot more pros than cons, but the cons is that you can actually feel the pain of others even more. You could feel the anguish even more.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's like you so much want to help them, but you know, until they're willing to want to help themselves, there is nothing you can do. I always say you can take a horse to water. You can't make it drink, but however, you leave it there long enough and it will realize it's thirsty. But we can't do anything but show them the light, show them a different way. Is it easier? No, is it more fruitful? Is it more beneficial? Is it more purposeful? Is it something to get you up and every day because you really want to in that state of gratitude and exuberance? Yes. But yes,
Yeah.
it's still a juggle because the human existence is about struggle. And the
Mhm.
more that we step into that struggle, the more actually our soul and spirits really grow. And then we get to that phase of a heightened frequency where that struggle is no longer as hard as it used to be.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
But you got to be willing to take the journey, right? You have to be willing to go through the process without dictatorship, without expectation. Just allow and be present and go through it.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, we're definitely on the same page there. I think the point that I keep saying or on a day-to-day basis is that, and I have to tell myself, um, it's not easy, but I will get there, right?
It may
And
be not easy, but it's worth it.
and you have to know that the light is at the end of the tunnel, right?
Yes.
That optimism, that's what makes it worth it, right? You
Yeah.
have to know and tell yourself, um, I will get there. And I think that's the power of positive affirmations
Yes.
and really practicing positive affirmations on a daily basis.
And
It's
gratitudes, right?
and gratitude. That's right.
Yes. I think the more you feed gratitude, the more you realize you are grateful for, and
Mhm.
and the less of the darkness, has its own light, has hold on you. And you know,
Mhm.
um, a lot of people will say, well, what is, stepping into your own divine essence got to do with mental health? Everything.
Oh
because
yeah.
we're because when we step into that higher spiritual plane, and I don't mean religion, I just mean stepping into that higher vibration, that higher frequency of love, of kindness, of caring for yourself,
Mhm.
that then exudes out to everyone else, then you have a better understanding of why you're here, what your meaningful purpose is. And it eases your mind quite considerably. I think a lot of depression comes from and strife and anger and violence and domestic violence comes from a frustration of not knowing what to do or how to express how to feel, or not knowing how to even take that journey towards
Mhm.
that light. It's people stuck in the dark that are lashing out, and they lash out on the people that are closest to them.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, I think you sort of bring us to uh, a lot about what Kyrie's journey and which is very similar to much of what I went through growing up. This book is about a young girl, and it basically gives her some portion of her life story in flashbacks,
Mhm.
right? So it's the story is told from initially from the point that she at 17 decides to leave her home through her window
Mm.
with no other real thought except she needed to leave the space that she was
Mhm.
in and she wanted to survive. That was it, right? And the story then goes on to go sort of back and forth from age 4 through adulthood, really taking Kyrie and through this lifetime of growing perspective,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And the point that you made about when people do bad things, basically it's
Mhm.
really coming from something else,
Yeah.
right? That's part of the perspective that I and in this book Kyrie came to as an adult, that what uh, you know parents don't always have the right tools,
No.
right, and even when they do have the right tools, they don't always get it right.
Yes. Well, they're so
And
caught up in their own
that's right.
angst,
That's
they don't know how to
right.
move forward. Yeah.
And there's a pathology to
Mm.
what was happening in the character's father. Man, he's the main sort of antagonist in the story. He there's a pathology to what was going on in his life, right? That story is not told in this book because it was very important for me as an author to tell one story here. That
Yeah.
was This was about Kyrie's voice and Kyrie's
Mm.
always coming to life. But I think there is something to be said when we talk about perspective. Uh, there's a reason that everyone behaves in the way that they do, and
Yes.
that doesn't make the person who is, spewing,
Mm.
emotional abuse and delivering physical abuse, in a home. That doesn't make them right, and
No.
it doesn't excuse the behavior. But understanding the perspective is important, because as you do that, it gives you the ability to have empathy.
Right. Yes. A big one to have, and it's very hard to have empathy or understanding, or even when people say forgive them and they go, what do you mean forgive them? They hurt me. They did this, they did that. Well,
Right.
in order for you to heal, you need to forgive. That doesn't mean you condone.
That's
But
right.
but we also have to remember in a relationship, and as a child, of course, it's a very different demographic. But in a relationship, especially between husband and wife, the battle that goes on is a battle that is constantly fed instead of the solution. You
That's
know, they're both wrong. One may be the abuser, the one is taking the abuse and not standing up and saying no. It takes two, unfortunately. There is pure evil in the world, absolutely. And there are some people that are just absolutely that and beyond that redemption. But for most of the time, it is the way they've been brought up. And it's absolutely amazing of how many people have been brought up with abuse that then go on to abuse their own. And that's
that's
because the pattern they're in, the programming that they're in is all they know. They don't want to do what
mhm,
happened to them, but they do it because that's the programming in them and they haven't
that's all,
realized they're on a loop.
that's right. That's all they know.
Yeah.
And frankly, without self-awareness,
Yeah.
right, which will then hopefully lead to treatment,
Yes.
there be no sort of deviation from that pattern.
Right.
You're going to be in that pattern. So I know that for myself, it really took becoming an adult and then ultimately recognizing that I needed to seek mental health assistance, right? Therapy is not something from a cultural perspective
Right.
that African Americans generally, at least historically, I'm hoping that that's changing,
Yes.
but that African Americans really have bought into. In many African American families and Black families, you're taught that when you have a problem, you deal with it and then you pray, right?
Right.
And I think that dealing with it and praying certainly should be a part of the solution.
Yeah.
But there also needs, oftentimes, particularly when there's trauma, there
Mm.
needs to be treatment from
Yeah.
a licensed mental health professional, which, I am, a staunch proponent of. But I didn't get there until I was about 40. You
Yes.
know, so I've spent the last 10 years. I'll be very transparent. I just turned 50.
Which you look
I
about 30, so you're looking
well,
wonderful, darling.
thank you, thank you. I've spent the last 10 years really focused on, learning who I am
Yeah.
and learning what the impact of my past has done and how it impacts me today on a daily basis. And you talked about forgiveness. One of the things that have come out of this book is, I've been doing a lot of writing, really, at the behest of trying to get additional publicity for the book. But one of the things that it caused me to write an article that I entitled "Finding Your Strength in Strife: The Gifts Lens,"
Mm.
and I essentially identify 5 categories, which really spell out the word gifts, GIFTS, that I feel are absolutely essential in this quest to find your strength in strife, right? And I'll just say that's grace for
Mhm.
G, right? Are you extending yourself enough grace? Are you
Mhm.
extending grace to others? Intention, right?
Mhm.
Are we intentional about what we're saying to ourselves?
Yeah.
Um, Forgiveness is the F.
Yeah. Yeah.
And forgiveness we could talk about for probably 5 shows, right? We could
Yes.
just talk about forgiveness, right? And that's really, are you forgiving others? Are you forgiving yourself?
Mm.
Right? The T stands for trauma, which I think is really important. I remember the first time a therapist said to me, you know that you've been impacted by a hell of a lot of trauma. I I got up and walked out the office. I was like, I don't know what he's talking about. Trauma. I'm a successful, oriented, self-made. I had a,
Don't you put that label on me.
that label. Because it's like kind of taboo
Yes.
for a lot of people. And it was for me until I actually, shifted to this growth mindset around who I was. And so the point is that you have to identify the trauma, recognize its impact before you can even begin identifying the strength, right?
Yeah.
And the life, right? The S, I have actually 2 words for S because I'm a wordy person, right? I.e. lawyer, writer, right?
Exactly.
So the S stands for strength and story, right? So if you get through the G, the I, the F, the T, hopefully you have identified what is the strength. What's the strength? That's the gift. And what is your story? Everyone has a story.
Yes.
Regardless of whether or not you're interested in writing it, sharing it, or what have you. Your story is important. Your story matters. And
even if you just write it out or speak to it for yourself.
that's right.
Yeah, I want to go back to forgiveness because you said, yes, it could easily be a 5-part show on it. But I think one of the biggest things and the hardest thing is not the forgiving of others, it's the forgiving of oneself.
That's right. That's right. I mean, particularly with traumatic life experiences, they usually get delivered on our doorstep, wrapped up in guilt and shame.
Yes.
Right. And self-deprecating
Yes.
stuff. Right.
You deserved it. You asked for it. You are nothing. What do you think you are? And all of that.
Right. That's right.
And we're prepared to buy that more than we're prepared to buy the other. Why? Why do we go down that rabbit hole and think so little of ourselves that we're prepared to go down there and do that?
That's right. We're our worst critics. And, I say, even as I am attempting to live this message, I do it to myself.
Yes.
I sometimes have, I have a deep bench of amazing women in my life who, will say to me, and my husband, who says to me, like, you're doing a good job.
Yeah.
I remember the first person that said to me was my godmother when I was in my 20s, and I was lamenting about something with my oldest daughter is turning 24 this year, and I was pregnant with her when I decided to go to law school. So
just to double up your, yeah, exactly.
But I was a young parent, was relative, but I felt like everything I was doing was just like was going to completely screw her up.
Yeah.
And my godmother said to me one day, I just want to stop for a moment. You're doing a great job. And I was like, really?
Yeah.
Like just hearing that was, so we need to say that to ourselves.
Yes.
Right?
And also stop expecting so much from ourselves.
Oh my goodness. Preach. Yes.
I mean, we put this, and this comes, I call it societal dictation. Society says you've got to look like this, be like this, have this amount of money, have those amount of followers, do this, do that, and then somebody will like you. Balderdash. Absolutely. is I know I'm wacky Sarah. I'm somebody's strong cup of black coffee, not everybody's cup of tea. Right?
That's right.
But it's taken 67 years for me to be comfortable with who I am, why I am, without apology. And I'm not going back now. And it's like, we're going to be people what they see as a reflection, and when people criticize on you, really is what they're doing is they're criticizing on themselves. They're just imposing that upon you. And stand tall in who you are. Is there room for improvement? Absolutely. We're going to be learning to the day we die.
That's
We're going
right.
to constantly be growing, but give yourself some grace. Give yourself a break. Stop trying to live up to this illusion that is delusional, and feel that you're letting yourself down because you're not a Cardassian.
That's right. That's right. And you know, it took a long time for me to even get to a space where I would that actually is that makes sense to me.
Yeah.
You know, when I was a teenager, you know, I felt like, you know, I had this challenging relationship, you know, with my dad, you know, who because of his own strife,
Mm-hmm.
you know, did not treat me very well. And frankly, you know, when I was being cursed at, when I was being smacked around, I would say to myself, you know, I'm a screw up. I'm
Yeah.
getting this is I'm you know, he's talking to me like this because I don't
Right.
deserve to be respected.
And,
And
and and parents' love should be unconditional. And so if they're not giving you love, then a child goes, but then I can't be lovable.
I can't be lovable. I can't be lovable. That's right. That's right. And my actions, you know, and as a young adult, you know, were really a direct result of me feeling like me needing to sort of validate myself, right? Needing to feel like I was worthy of love. I was worthy of respect. I think that well, I know what came out of that. What ultimately was grew in me is someone who you know, you want to talk about impact.
Mm-hmm.
I cannot be spoken to in a disrespectful way by
Good.
anyone. I
Good.
will I will not allow it.
Good.
Not I will
That's
not
your
be
boundary.
I
Don't
will not
cross it.
do
Mm-hmm.
that. I will not. We can have a conversation
Yeah.
where we don't agree, but if the conversation decibel over the one that I'm talking right now, it's over. I'm
Yes.
not going to, that's not dialogue that I'm engaging in.
Right.
And someone might say that I'm like really anal about that, but
But
it
why
is
should you take it on? Why should you
what
take on the disrespect? You know,
exactly.
and it is, I'm sorry, if we're going down in that tone, if we're going down in that path, this conversation is closed.
That's right.
That is
That's
standing
right.
up for yourself. That
That's
is
right.
saying, this is my boundary.
This is my
I will
boundary.
not go there. You know,
Right.
my kids call it the mama voice
Mm,
because I mean, I'm sounding husky and deep today because of the bronchitis, but mama goes into the deep voice. And I have a
mhm.
13-month-old, 13-month-old grandson right now. When they say, don't do that, Rowan, in the same tone that they would say, I love you. I'm going,
Uh,
Rowan.
right.
And I give him the look and I give him the voice and he looks at me and looks back at them and looks at me and it listen to grandma because he knows that is boundaries. And
That's
we
right.
can have those boundaries.
That's
We
right.
can set those. Why should we take the distance?
Mhm.
At the same time, you've got cyber trolls, you've got people online. Don't respond.
Right.
Don't
That's right.
respond. If I find somebody disrespecting me on social media in a way that is above and beyond, they are immediately deleted. That's it.
That's right.
I'm not going to say to you, why do you feel this way or this or that? No,
Right.
delete.
That's right. That's right. And you know, my journey and what has been exemplified in this book, Gifts in Brown Paper Packages, about Kyrie's journey, it's all about learning how to draw the line,
Yeah.
learning how to set boundaries. And sometimes, unfortunately, you're setting those boundaries with people that love you and that you love,
Mhm.
right? And it's really really important
Yeah.
to learn that. So you know, I think out of this story, it is a lesson in so many different things. It's a lesson in overcoming really not so nice stuff,
Yeah.
um, and recognizing how to not only survive but flip the tables and
Mm.
thrive, right? It's about learning how to make the hard decisions, which you know Kyrie does. You know, she's a, you know, this character is funny. She makes you laugh with some of her reactions to things. She makes you cry through,
Mm.
you know, some of the experiences, which are sometimes a bit heart wrenching. Um, but she also makes you think about make decisions, right? And how to be strong about decisions, even ones that are not popular.
She's kind of a mirror, right? A mirror that everybody can see their reflection in. I'm going to ask a personal question. You went on to be a very successful lawyer. Do you think that maybe you chose that path to be the successful lawyer, to maybe even say to the parents, can you love me now as a successful woman?
Oh, yes. I mean, that's interesting. That's actually the first time I've gotten that question. But it's an easy one to answer. There was definitely a lot of need for validation in my choice of career. I knew that, one, being a strong advocate, which, being a lawyer, you're advocating usually for someone or something or some entity. I knew that that was something that my father would certainly respect, and that he could not deny its value and power. And it's very interesting. At the time that I graduated from law school, I was really not on any kind of speaking terms with my father, and my mother, who I have always had, while challenging but close relationship with. When I called her and invited them, I said, yeah, I'd like him to be there. And I know that where that came from.
Yeah.
I know where that came from. Yeah. That was about me wanting to say,
look at me now.
Look at me now. Do you love me now?
Yeah.
And it's interesting because for him, I know that it was his proudest moment. I know that because it really did value all the things that he felt were important: education, and knowing how to not only read, but knowing how to use words in a powerful way. And these were things that he had always, with all of his struggles and my father had a number of struggles with, drug abuse. He had been incarcerated for some time and had issues with the law in the context of that incarceration. And, he was someone who was very, very well-read and looked at books and reading and writing to be like on this
freedom,
this pinnacle. And as a result, and there's some similarities, of course, in this. What did you call it? What did you call it?
Faction. Yes,
there's some
faction and fiction put together.
In this factional story, because Kyrie is a wordsmith, and she's a wordsmith because her father forces her to read books that are far beyond her young comprehension. So because of it, she becomes really, really impressed with words, and impresses her teachers with her knowledge of words all the time. So it's one of the funny little anecdotes in the story, but it's one that rings true for me. So yes, the long-winded answer to your question, yes.
Has he read the book?
So my father's actually passed.
Oh.
Yeah, he died in 2019. So and interestingly enough, I mean, we, our relationship was certainly a lot better as an adult, but we never had a close relationship, and we never really dialogued about any of this stuff.
Surface stuff.
It was very surface, and really it be sort of tolerating, because I wanted to have the at least the vision of the family. So we do family dinners at my house and that sort of thing, but it was very surface.
Yeah. What do you think you'd think of the journey now, giving up law, going into writing?
I don't really know how to answer that question.
Mm,
I think that I'm not sure. I'm not sure how comfortable he would be with he was a very private person.
mhm.
So even me saying, look, I'm comfortable with saying that, there's much about this story that's my own. I will say that writing faction gives you the ability to infuse some creative license. So,
Yeah,
you know, I don't think it's important that readers know every single fact that is fact and every
right.
single fact. That's why it's fiction,
Yeah,
right? Uh, I don't think that my father would have been appreciative of even the inference
right.
that there's any part of this that is real, because it's really very exposing,
Yeah.
uh, particularly of the father character in this book, and that's I don't know that that's something he'd be comfortable with. With that said, um, it certainly would have forced some dialogue.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and
Like,
and I will say that it has actually forced some dialogue with my mom that has been very, very productive. So
probably
uh,
kind of gave her that permission to be able to speak, because probably she didn't have that permission in her life, right?
that's right.
And that's
That's
another thing, we wait for permission from other people. The only
mhm,
person to give you permission is yourself.
that's right. That's right. That's right. And everyone's journey is their own.
Yeah.
It was important to me in this story to really stick to Kyrie's story. Kyrie's perspective was the perspective that I was concerned about.
Mhm.
So, I was initially, when I decided to publish this, and I should say I didn't write this to publish.
Uh-huh.
I didn't decide that it was something that needed to be published until after it was completed, and I sat with it and edited it with my former college English professor, who I dug out of the internet, and said, you always supported my writing. I want you to read some things. And she said to me, this is amazing work. I want to work with you on this. I will edit it for a meal.
Wow. Yeah,
And
that's kind of
um,
energy you want.
yeah, so she actually worked with me on the first editing of this book. And by the way, she was one of these folks completely out of the demographic who said, oh my God, there were so many parts of this that resonated with me, which I thought was amazing. But, you know, I started writing this after a therapist at the time, uh, you know, over, uh, you know, 7 or 8 years ago, said to me, you don't really want to talk about the things that you need to talk about in this
Uh-huh.
room. Like you're a good client in that you come in here ready to talk and you've got lots of stuff. But I think that we're not talking about the things that you need to talk about
Right.
from your childhood. So since you seem reluctant, why don't you like to write? Why don't you start writing it down? And
Mhm.
I started writing these anecdotes, shall we call them, I'll say scenes, because a lot of people say this book reads like a movie. So
Mhm.
I'll say scenes. I started writing them standing outside from the third person, right? Because it was easier for me
Uh-huh.
to look at Kyrie as someone else, right? And to tell stories where I could actually fill in, fuzzy details. Uh, it really was written to process some stuff. And as I neared ending it, when I decided, okay, I've got to end this because this could go on, I could go on for another, 200 pages if I wanted to. I said, and
That's
I
book
read,
two.
I said, this is powerful. This has a message that I think can be helpful for people who, you know, uh, need something to look to as a guide. Like,
Uh-huh.
really? Wow, she went through that. Well, I went through X, which is very different, but I felt similarly.
Right.
I can I can look at that as a gift as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that is the whole purpose of writing. I mean, you can write a book that is, titillation and fun, and it was an exciting adventure. Or you
Mhm.
can write a book that, for me, a book that's taken me down a journey that has me thinking afterwards.
Mhm.
talking about it or reflecting on my own life, or I when I am reading a book, I like to read it like a movie and I become the character. um
Mhm.
and it is something then that really resonates with you, right? And
Mhm.
there's a
Def-
lot of people that write their books in a kind of a self-help type format, but I think sometimes going back to the story,
Yeah,
the story is, we learn more, I think, through a story that where we find, and this is the thing about book clubs, you can have several people read it and each one of them come and share what part of the book
that's
really
right.
hit them, and then all of a sudden you have a new story there
That's
that's
right.
been created out of the story, because everybody will have something that has sparked something
Mhm.
from that. And that's what makes it exciting,
Oh
because
yeah.
it forms a dialogue and we haven't been given permission to speak, to share these things. It's been a stigma, or suck it up, or aren't you over it yet,
Mhm.
or mine's bigger than yours. And it's like,
Yeah,
pain is pain.
that's right.
and
I
and,
say,
and
I
who
say,
knows what your pain is, but I know what mine is.
that's right. I always quote he's a clinical psychologist, a doctor, Bessel is his name. And he has devoted his life to the study of trauma. And I've heard this doctor say over and over again, it's not about playing trauma Olympics. No
Mm,
one, it's not about, we're not going to compare big T to little t.
right.
A war veteran's trauma may not be the same as someone who, you know, saw a car accident, or someone that, got treated badly by a spouse or a family member, or was, victimized in a sexual way. The trauma doesn't have to be compared, because
No.
what's important is the impact.
Yes.
Important is how it made you feel. And that's really, really relevant. It is actually the most relevant. So yeah, it's, and that was important for me, because for a long time I said, I didn't like, I mean, yeah, I got smacked around and called names and screamed at, but that's, I never went to the hospital.
Right.
Like,
How
children
far
now,
does it have to go before you're validated,
right.
right?
No one could ever look at me and tell that I had had a rough night at home.
Right.
So that wasn't really abuse. It wasn't really,
Yes.
and even as I was going through the process to publish, I was saying, like, wow, is this real? Like, can I really call this what I'm calling
Uh,
it? Answer is hell yeah.
yes. If it made you feel
Oh,
vulnerable and unsafe and unloved, it's trauma.
it's trauma. That's
It's
right.
trauma. And
That's right.
a lot of people say, but trauma's become the big thing. And yes, because we have suppressed it for so long.
That's
For
right.
so long, we've denied it.
We
And if we
denied it.
don't talk about it, we're not going to release it. We're not going to understand the impact that it has, and we're not going to heal it. So we
That's right.
need to talk about it. And I've interviewed people that, with what they've been through, I wouldn't blame them if they were the most vengeful person in the world.
Right. That's right.
But they chose the grace
Hmm.
in their healing to be forgiving. And that doesn't mean condoning,
Right.
but to rise above. And each one of them has stepped into a service to serve others going through it. They have become the greatest gift to
That's right.
others because they understand. And I would say inspiration begets invitation.
That's right. There's so much power in being vulnerable.
Yeah.
There's so much opportunity for connecting when you're vulnerable.
Yeah.
and vulnerability is hard. I've had a couple of people say to me, how does it feel to be like talking about these issues, particularly in your professional circles? And I said, it's interesting. One of the reasons why I never even thought about publishing this until after it was written was, this is not a story that I've ever allowed to define me, right?
Mm,
I never, I never felt like, particularly in the professional circles that I ran in, right, with attorneys are some of the most elitist people that you could ever find, right? Across the board, regardless of, what race or, socioeconomic background they come from. It's something about, that license that sometimes makes folks really a-holes, right?
Yes. Yes.
So with that said, I was like, this is not something that I want people to look at me and in my professional circles and know about me. That's the shame.
Yes.
But what I found when I finally began to own that truth was it's such a connector. It's such
Mm-hmm.
a connector. And you don't know what someone has gone through, all right, until you actually get into that space of connection, right?
Doesn't matter
So
how rich they are, how
that's
popular they
right.
are, or what their
That's
position is in life. Do not assume that
that's
somebody, if that's supposed to be up at this level, hasn't gone through
that's,
stuff.
that's right. Domestic violence comes in all different
Yeah.
shapes, sizes, colors, and economic
Yes.
background, right?
Yes. It doesn't
So
discriminate.
it doesn't discriminate. So yeah, and then the one other thing I want to mention about this book is that, what I think one of the things that sets it apart from other, books in this genre, or other coming of age stories, is that not often do you get this story, right? Of anytime you have a protagonist that is young and African American, it's going to be nuanced, right? It's not going to be a story that you've necessarily heard.
Right.
But then when you add to that, that this person was, raised in the type of background that we've been talking about, and left home at 17 feeling as demoralized as has been described, then creates a successful life, right? And is able to sort of, to your earlier point, right, sort of turn that around and recognize where the gifts are and then begin to serve, right? It is a nuanced story that you don't hear often.
Yeah.
And the other thing I'll mention is music is a strong driver in this story. And I think that's unique. This book, if you go to my website, which is spbrownwrites.com, you will find that this book has a soundtrack.
Yes.
Why does it have a soundtrack? Because every chapter is headed by a song and an artist, because for the character, music was one of those sort of healing, things that sort of kept her comforted and made her feel protected at times of real challenge in her life and in her home. So, folks have really resonated with that across demographics. Like,
Oh God, yeah. I mean,
yeah.
music is a language of its own, and it's very it has a way of articulating sometimes some things that we can't, has a way of expressing in ways that sometimes we don't feel safe to do so.
That's right.
And that music opens it up for you to speak how you feel, gives you permission to how you feel, and comforts you when you're feeling bad. I mean, music is extremely important in my life, and I love the fact that you've put it in with the chapters and set the stage in which to read the chapter. Because that's what the music has done. Excellent. Wonderful.
Right. That's right. That's right. And, I figure there are artists in here that folks will know and will have heard of, but there are artists that I'm hoping that I'm introducing to people, and it's the genre spans, from, Earth, Wind and Fire to,
love them.
Stephanie Mills, who's a sort of an old school artist for me, to some, more current artists that are, popular today. So, that's something that was very important to me. And it's exciting to me when people say that, oh my goodness, that was the song that I played at my wedding. It back to a different place. And or wow, when the OJ's, when I listened to that OJ song, I never thought of that, but that's really gives me some different perspective about what that song can certainly mean and the feelings that it can evoke.
And the thing about music, I had this artist on this week, And the beauty of it is this song is called Petty Narcissist. Right? There's that you have, and it's like, how often would we see a song with the word narcissist in it? And the song is about that control that a narcissist has, and what it did to the relationship, and how many people are going through those kind of relationships where a song can, oh, there's a song about what I'm going through. And that's the thing about the beauty of a song. It is telling a story or setting the stage for you which to read a story in that same frame, in that same light. And
Yeah.
it's really, really, I'm glad that you've also given new artists a role in there as well.
Yeah.
And I'd love to interview them because I love interviewing musicians. It's a guilty pleasure of mine.
Ah,
It takes guts to write. People keep nagging at me to write, and it's been, yeah, I know. And then I get busy, and then it's like you
right.
have, yeah. And that it's right in the third party. And I think, for me, it's going to be my angel's perspective. Oy vey, what did I end up with? Trying to steer me down the right road and me constantly going off on the wrong one. And I think that's the only way I'm going to be able to write it, because to write it in the first person, sometimes it's not a question of too painful, but I think it's also too easy to go down that rabbit hole. And when you write it as a different character who are going through this, that there's a certain amount of triumph and strength you want to give that character that sometimes you wish you had had at that time, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So,
that's a good point. Very good point. Very good.
so I mean, the whole title about it, and the music with it, everything in the brown paper packages, I'm an old Brit, so our books used to be covered in brown paper packages. So kind of really relates. But that's also another thing, is that we're very drawn to glitter and glamour and glitz and this and that, and then feel let down because that same inspiration isn't there. And I think when we're drawn, we're begging for authenticity now. We're begging for truth. We're begging for honesty. We want to hear these stories because they're a permission for us to say our own stories, even if just to ourselves, and to reflect our own story in somebody else's story. It becomes that permission, that liberation, that illumination that we need. So a book like yours is certainly going to help people, I think, free themselves and form a conversation. And to that, the greatest gift you can give yourself is your vulnerability.
Mm. Yeah, that's poignant. I like that. You've got a couple of really good lines in here.
Thank you. Can you show us the book?
Oh, definitely. So this is the book. And as you can see, it's gifts in brown paper packages. I talked about gifts on your doorstep, but you will see that is actually a apartment fire escape.
The one that she escaped from.
Well, you have to read the book. Yeah.
People want to escape their situation. And very often they get so bogged down in that rabbit hole, they don't know how. They just don't know how to defend themselves anymore. They don't know how to stand up. They're being kind of so beaten down. And to have a book where somebody did escape, that did find the courage, and they didn't know what they were going to, stepping out into the unknown, but at least stepping out into your own empowerment. This, whatever choice that's made from here, it's mine. It's not somebody's choice imposed upon me. And that liberation and that courage to do that, it's because so many people will not escape because they just don't know how.
That's right. And I'm so glad you said that, because I think it's important to mention, I mentioned that I, sit on the board of a domestic violence agency. That's something that I didn't know existed. And I think that understanding that there are resources out there, that there are agencies out there that are there for this purpose, it's so amazing. And these folks are there doing God's work. I really feel that they're doing God's work. I mean, the agency that I sit on the board for is the Safe Center of Long Island. It is in Nassau County, Long Island, New York, and it services, you know, the thousands and thousands of residents that live in Nassau County and Suffolk County as well. But, you know, there are other agencies. I have resources available on my website, national resources, national hotlines that are there to help direct folks to the resources in your area. So please, I think that if there's any takeaway from this conversation, it's really understanding that you might not feel like you have the to get out of the situation that you're in on your own. There are people out there a phone call away.
Yeah. There are so many people saying, come take my hand. I'll show you the way. And it just has to come to a point where you get thirsty enough to want to drink the water.
That's right.
Right.
And drink the water. And as you're drinking it, recognize that there's light at the end of the tunnel.
Yes.
That you are worth more. Whoever you are, you're worth more than how you feel in that moment, living in the space that you're living in.
The light has always been there. You had your back to it. Turn around. Walk towards that light. And even when you come out, you feel rather blinded at first and you feel the shadows chasing you. But as you adjust to that light and just please, one step at a time, the biggest leap you will ever take is the first step. One step at a time. Allow yourself to come out in that self-discovery of who you are, why you are, and what you're here to do now. Do not think, well, now I'm going to go and do this, I'm going to do that. Allow that process. There is no quick fix through the process. Allow yourself to go through it. And when you come out that other end, you feel that you are more in control of your own choices in life. And that's the importance.
Yeah. I want to read 2 quotes. I actually have them on the back of a little thank you card that I give when people buy my book. But I think they're quotes that really personify what we've been talking about. The first one is a gift, whether it is one that you or I asked for or one that was gratuitous. Whether it is one that we are immediately grateful for or one that we begrudgingly or unwittingly accept. That's a quote from the epilogue. And then the last one I'll mention is, every experience, obstacle, and decision, good or bad, is a gift that manifests itself in the whole that makes me distinct and you as well. Gifts and packages, the epilogue. So yeah, I think these are mantras that we can sort of live with and remind ourselves of every day.
And to remind yourself every day. Do not think, well, I've done it once and that's it. You know, you've got to reprogram. You've got to repattern. You've got to step into a rhythm of life that will serve you. And one is constantly looking around for something to be grateful for. You know, the leaves on the trees, the children in the street, the puppy dogs wagging tails, the breeze that moves things along. When you learn to be grateful for all the things that are around you, all the opportunities that are there, all the possibilities that are at your fingertips, you begin to see. And now you can start walking towards it.
Yeah. Yeah. The reminding yourself to be grateful is important.
Yeah.
Important.
Yep. And, you know, even grateful, I mean, everybody I've ever interviewed that's had their own trauma, some of it's been catastrophic, they've all said, I wouldn't change anything because who I am today, because of it, what I'm doing today, the meaningful purpose of what I'm doing is I wouldn't be doing this if I had not been there. And, you know, we don't think it's happening to you, it's happening for you. And it's for you to actually understand, what are you meant to learn from it? Who are you meant to become because of it? And you, an author.
Yeah.
That's what you were meant to become, right?
Author, a speaker, and someone who inspires myself while I inspire others.
And that is an important thing to do, to look at yourself. I mean, I do my own shows every week, and I did one a little while ago saying, you know, about looking back. And it's like, Every time I feel I'm stagnant and I feel I haven't gone through, I haven't reached that plan yet that I want. Why is this not coming together? And then
I said that yesterday.
you're right, and it's like, turn around and look about where you've been and look at what you have accomplished and look at what you have done, right? Just because you haven't got to where you think you should be right now, that's okay. You will get there when you are meant to get there, but never ever undersell what you've already achieved, right?
Yeah.
It's all important.
Yeah.
So
Perfect.
SP Brown Writes, that's WRITES.com. SP Brown Writes on Instagram. Are you on any other social medias, love?
I am also on Facebook. It's on Facebook, SP Brown Writes, with no punctuation, just SP Brown WRITES. And then on Instagram, it's at SP Brown Writes as well. .com.
Wonderful. Folks, not only get the book, form a book club, have the conversation, share. We've all got experiences. I don't care who you are, from what walk of life, what your economic situation, what anything is. We're all human beings who have gone through something in life. This isn't a competition. This is a support. This is cheering people on from where they are now, where they can be. When we step into compassion instead of comparison, when we step into kindness instead of cruelty, when we step into self-love and be that love that others need, we then become the solution the entire planet needs. So your recovery is just as important to you as it is to everyone else around you. Yeah. Get the book, read the book, share the book, have other people read it, have a book club, start the conversation in your own family with your own friends. It's time to open up unapologetically and share, right? Yeah. No blame, no shame. That's not allowed. Hands up. Not allowed.
I love it. I want to just repeat, because I didn't have my glasses on close enough. Yes. On Instagram, it's s.p.brown writes. So s.p. Brown writes.
Don't forget the dots.
Yeah, get the dots. There it is.
Right. There we go. Not a bit blurry. Go back a bit. It's on the show page. Don't forget, just put in SP Brown right here on selfdiscoverymedia.com and our show will come up. And awesome. It's the gifts that we get, folks, are the gifts that people share with us here in Self-Discovery Media. They've taken the journey. They're now sharing the journey. They're sharing the solutions, and they're here to inspire because of the journey they've taken. And this is one of the greatest gifts that we can have, because she's shared her vulnerability with us here today. And in doing so becomes that inspiration that begets that invitation for you to take your own journey, because every single one of us has to take a journey. Otherwise we become stagnant. And in that stagnancy, we wither up and we die. We're fluid creatures that have to be constantly in flow. Choose your flow. What you feed is what will grow, right? Feed the possibilities. Thank you so much for being here today, love.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Absolute pleasure. Until next time, folks, remember, you are worthy of being you. Bye for now. We hope that you enjoyed the show. Find all of our shows on selfdiscoverymedia.com under podcasts or self-discovery-media/shows. And for all our current shows, go to What's New. We are supported by you, the audience. You'll see a nice big shiny blue button for one-time donations, or follow us on Patreon and you will be able to support us there. We enjoy bringing you such wisdom. And the next show will be up in just a moment.